This country been run by a brother goats. The greediest of all time. They have all of self and none of the mentality. The chorus is bunch of pigs and goats running this desk. And the latest deception and betrayal is really cause for alarm. They're the greediest of all time. It is plain to see the true gang and give a damn about you and me. Even big supporters crying foul and shame at how these comrades dirty in the Labour Party name. Don't business about that as long as they pocket fat. Too bad who don't agree. The good them say it's all about me. That's the chorus. Who is the nanny gate liar? Who don't spin doctor? Men, whose sole agenda is to make themselves richer and the poor are them. They say I know that I greedy, but I beg you don't watch me stop being hateful. Instead just be grateful. All the good them say it's all about me. That's the slogan. The big salary increase is just the latest injustice to be imposed on the people by these blundering misfits. They're selfish and greedy with no love for the needy. Malicious and run race, make the thing ain't got no taste. Disrespectful and pompous, arrogant and self-righteous. These goats too brave and bold, ain't got no heart, no soul. They fed on their own nest, we not a care for the rest. They say it's all about me. That's the goat, them mantra. Who want the whole hog treating poor people like dog, man. Who keep flying high and start leaving our sons here to die, man. Who take the pepper, drop up and kill off the peace, man. Enough talking about lift and elevate, just words and promises but no relief. Who lacking empathy, compassion, humility, me. Who think that shame, lame, rename is a sustainable strategy? Here they got them men. But woe be unto these ghosts and vampires. Ecclesiastes 5 verse 10 says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. Firstly, not grievous evil under the sun. Wealth brought to the harm of its owners, lost to misfortune, so that their children have nothing to inherit. So let them carry on, God don't like ugly. Playing who, fooling who since June 2022, man. Who do the big bet and switch, divide the poor and the rich, man. Who raking in bigly while so many going hungry, man. Who are disgrace of the eye, blood-sucking parasite, a bunch of termites. It more them, man. We love to serve our country that God has blessed so well. In peace and love and happiness, we will forever dwell. We ask for God's protection and guidance on our way. The People's Action Movement will strive from day to day. The People's Action Movement is here and here to stay.
And water are fundamental rights and are in fact key determinants to economic and social well-being. On the examination this evening is the topic Running Dry, the fight for water, land and housing in St. Kitts and Nevis. Well, we say St. Kitts and Nevis because that is the name of the island state, but predominantly this conversation would focus on St. Kitts. This is Perspectives, a live social media series brought to you by the People's Action Movement. The People's Action Movement is a party that has been formed for the last 60 years. In fact, this is our diamond anniversary year. And so we have some degree of knowledge of governance and government. And although we're in opposition now, we are working assiduously to make our way down to government headquarters a few months from now. This evening, I want you to help me to welcome back our political leader, Mrs. Natasha Shani Gray Brooks. Of course, if you've been following Perspectives for the last recent months, you would have heard us mention that on the third Thursday in the month, we would have our political leader here to address challenging social issues that are talking points in St. Kitts. And so this evening, as I said earlier, the matter under discussion is water, land and housing. All three are important, but we're going to use the first half an hour to talk about the land and housing issues. And then as we close, we'll zero in on the water wars that St. Kitts continue to experience. And so help me to welcome political leader Gray Brooks and to say welcome back to Perspectives.
Good night, Lady Laverne. It is a pleasure to be here, and good night to the listening and viewing audience. As always, the People's Action Movement is about bringing truth to power and ensuring that we keep you informed in terms of the happenings and the lack thereof. And so tonight, as the host indicated, that we are going to be addressing a few important pillars in our community, in our country, and we want to highlight some of the failures, some of the things that our constituents, our citizens and residents in the country have been complaining about, and where do we go from here? How do we move forward in ensuring that our citizens have the best of what this country has to offer?
Thank you, political leader. And so the first areas that we'll be examining are those of land and housing. Now, understandably, land is a scarce resource. We live on a small island,
Yes.
and of course, the population is expecting to be comfortably housed. Maslow's theory of needs suggests that housing and shelter and land and water are the primary expectations that a human being has. So when we examine the issue of land in St. Kitts, where are we as far as you are aware?
Well, I think we are not where we ought to be, in that we need to understand in terms of the government's policy, in terms of distribution of land and how houses are allocated and who is likely to benefit. Now, we understand that persons in the low income brackets and the medium income bracket may have some challenges in terms of acquiring a piece of the rock, so to speak. And so we must ensure that persons understand, how do I qualify? What do I need to do? Are there any partnerships with private institutions to assist me? Because, you know, when you own a piece of the rock, you have that financial stability, you have a sense of security knowing that there is a shelter, a roof over your head. And it not only helps to bring that sense of security to our people, but there is a drive in the economy because there's construction, and so there's a boom in terms of the building supplies, and even the persons who do different services. We have the vendors, the food vendors, so you find the little shops may benefit because once there's work in the area, you find people will try to support the different businesses, and if that is not happening, you will see what we are seeing now. Mm-hmm. The economy will kind of start to slow down at a pace that we do not want because it increases poverty, so to speak.
It surely does. And you're right that land is really you know, the equitable distribution of land is essential for social stability.
Yes, it is.
It's hard to tell somebody who were born in a country that they can't get a piece of land. There was a time when a young person just finishing with school would rather save towards getting a piece of land first than a car. It's a little bit reversed these days, and it may very well be that because the issue of land is such a challenging one, that maybe the young people are saying, you know what, I can't get a piece of land. I'm frustrated. So in the meantime,
let me get a
I'm
car.
going to take my money and buy a car. But of course, a car is a depreciating asset.
Yes.
So we would really like to see our young people in particular pay more attention in getting a piece of the rock as you described it. Now, we know that there was a recent census. I think, if my memory serves me right, the population is a little bit over 51,000 in both islands. Of course, St. Kitts being the bigger of the two, the population on St. Kitts is significantly higher than that of Nevis. We also know that in as much as land can be acquired from the government and from private owners, that for the most part, land that is sold by government is always a little bit more affordable than land that is bought from a private entity. And so everybody's always looking to governments to get a piece of land. We see that from the same census, there is a particular constituency or parish, I think St. Peter's number 8, that is growing fairly quickly than any other constituency. It means then that may be one of the challenges that government would encounter in terms of finding land for people in this particular area. But even before we talk specifically about where the demand for land might be, I just want to state for the record that yes, the sugar lands were acquired by the former Labour administration, not this Labour administration, but many years ago, another Labour administration, but they were actually paid for by the People's Action Movement. So we want this conversation to be understood in the context that our party leaders understood
importance.
If you paid for land, and the government then had control over these lands, then the distribution of land to the average Tom and Joe becomes a lot easier and affordable. Now, if we're in a state where the government is, and we've seen it a lot, we've heard about instances where people have multiple pieces of land. That land has been issued, one piece of land has been issued to 5 and 6 and 7 people. So it seems to me that the government probably doesn't have a good record keeping of land distribution, or perhaps during the silly season, land is used as a ploy to get people in. How do you address these issues as the political leader?
I think land ought to be used as a tool to empower people, not as a wand to, flash in front of someone's eyes. And as you rightly said, sometimes you hear a person saying, during the silly season, I get my land. However, we've discovered that sometimes either somebody else has already gotten an allocation letter in relation to that said land, and payments have already been made. So you find that two persons are paying for the same set of land, and it brings the ministry into disrepute. In fact, I have a client, I hope he's listening, he has that same issue because he has a problem where land was allocated to him and also allocated to another citizen,
the same piece of land,
another citizen who is not a resident in St. Kitts, but he has made in excess of $60,000 payment on the land. And after this administration took over, there was a notice issued about a pause on payments at the Treasury. And since 2022, he is ready to pay off for the land. But because that issue is there, looming over him, he's unable to acquire his land properly and officially, and so the payments are seized, and there has been an issue in terms of confirming that you can now continue. And so that is something that causes problems between not just the citizens, but in terms of the processes in and how government operate the different ministries. Because if I am a young person looking on and I want to acquire a piece of land, but I am hearing about all these stories about one plot of land being allocated to different persons, where do I fit in? How do I assess the timeline for me to acquire a piece of land, and even to seek financing if I want to build? So we have to be able to set a firm policy in terms of who qualifies, what is the timeline in terms of payments, what is the timeline in terms of ensuring that you can put your land or register your land, so that persons understand, this is not just a gimmick, this is not just a ploy and I'm trying to win you over. This is a government who is actually trying to ensure that there is some form of security for its people. Because as you indicated, land is something that appreciates. And if it is you're a young person being able to acquire a piece of land, that gives you a sense of security. You now have collateral, you can move to the bank, you can leave things for your children. And with a state of confusion existing still after the 2022 election, and you're not hearing any news or announcements about land being distributed in this area, land being distributed, and so you find that people there's a sense of insecurity. You don't understand what you have to do as a citizen to be able to achieve things in this country. And sometimes you hear persons who may not be from the federation, who do not live here, can invest and can own a piece of the rock, but a citizen paying taxes is struggling. And I don't think it's clear, so people don't understand what they can do, how they can qualify, and why others benefit over them. And I think that is something that needs to be established. It needs to be placed out there so that persons can hold the government's feet to the fire. Hey, you failed in that aspect. I have all my documents lined up. I have my payment. My salary is this. So why can't I get a piece of the rock? I think there has to be some firm policies outlined, and that is one of the things that we are committed to doing, because it can't just be that land is being used to pull wool over people's eye. Our forefathers fought for it. The lands were paid for, and it is not to be used as a tool or some form of bribery, because that's not that was not the purpose. People must understand that when you fight hard for something, you must ensure that it is put to good use and to good use for the people.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I also have heard of cases. In fact, I have a friend who told me he experienced the same thing. He was allocated a plot of land. He had been paying for the land, and then 2022 August came, and like your client, he too received a letter saying, hold on, stop with the payment. And in the meantime, he has not been told what is the next step. I mean, I don't think it is fair for people, and especially citizens of a country, to have to endure that kind of, I call it social injustice.
It is.
And so it is something that our party is taking a serious look at, because these things have to be fixed. And it is all the more worrisome when you look at situations where one family or people in a family, everybody in a family in a particular household, were the beneficiaries of allocation of land. Whereas when you look on the other side of the fence, not even one person in another family could get a square foot. And so really it is something that is a vexing matter, because it is a fundamental right.
Yes.
It is a right that as a citizen the least you can get is a plot of land in the place, the country of your birth.
Yeah.
So it is something that is really worth talking about for a long time. And especially, young people, like I said earlier on, people, when the young people once upon a time when they left school they were looking forward to buying a plot of land. And now with all of the frustration,
They're not encouraged.
exactly, and so
Not
they're taking the
encouraged.
money instead of putting it in a depreciated asset in a vehicle, which is
Yes.
really very sad. And I guess we could always have another discussion one day, and especially against the backdrop of the number of vehicles that we heard that were recently imported.
Yes, yes.
To weigh up, because I had a conversation with somebody and I said, look, I am not a mathematician by any means, but if on average a car when it's landed costs about, let's say $15,000 at a bare minimum, that could be a deposit on a piece of land.
It could be.
And then you also have to talk about gas and maintenance and insurance for the car.
Yes.
And those costs annualized can be dependent on a piece of land. So we really want to get our young people to think about land as opposed to a vehicle, and understand that, like you said, it is an investment in perpetuity that can grow and that can be passed on from generation to generation. But, Madam Political Leader, we also have an issue of abandoned houses.
Yes.
And I dial back to the election campaign of 2022, when John L. Powell, one in the number 2, had a brilliant proposal about turning portions of Irish Town into boardwalk, and having some program that would utilize the land, the abandoned land of people. Now, when I was doing some research for this discussion, I also realized that one of the things that some governments do is that they say, okay, if you have land that is sitting idle for all these years and with no plans, you're taxed at a higher rate. Now, I don't know if you want to go. I don't know if you want to go in that direction, because at the end of the day, it would probably be even difficult to find the owners of these lands.
Yes.
But I think that we're at a point in St. Kitts now where government has to find answers to those questions. Who are the owners of these abandoned properties? How can they be resolved? I mean, we know that governments across the world could be high-handed. It only takes maybe an act of parliament to acquire property and all of that. But I think that we're reaching a point now, since land is limited,
Yes.
and since the demand for housing, which we'll come to very shortly, is so great, that these abandoned properties, something must be done for them. I don't know if that is something you contemplated in this discussion.
Not really, but this is something that I also campaigned about in 2022, because I know within the Bastia area, there's not many land lots available. And so you will hear frequently, I don't want to go to the country, I don't want to go here, I don't want to go there. And during the campaigning season, I recognized that in East Bastia, every street had at least in certain parts, 2 abandoned houses. I mean, some of these arose out of family disputes, maybe lack of financing to finish a property. And I think the government has the resources and the information, access to the information, to do the necessary searches, to find out who these properties belong to, engage them, have discussions, maybe purchase the land, acquire the land so that you can build lots for persons who are in need, and maybe they could even, fix them up for different businesses or government buildings, as opposed to the continuous renting of private businesses. So it not only helps to get land for other persons, but it cleans up the area.
Aesthetically, yeah.
It diminishes the criminality that can lurk around these buildings, because sometimes you find some of these buildings, they're there, and we hear from time to time persons' houses being broken into, and maybe persons may be hiding out in these very buildings, maybe weapons may be hidden in these buildings. And so you not only provide land and opportunities for housing to others, you increase the health situation in these communities, and you help to curb some criminal activity. So this is something that I know there's a Land Acquisition Act that governments can acquire properties for different uses, and this ought to be considered as one of those, because we are a country that also thrives on tourism, and the Bastia area, Central Bastia, McKnight, you have East Bastia, so you have those areas that you can enhance your tourism product, so that when visitors walk from Port Zante and walk through these areas which are in walking distance, they get a sense of pride that this country is someone who is taking pride in itself and ensuring that visitors have a good experience and one that is not an eyesore. So it serves a different number of purposes when government maybe look at these abandoned buildings. And I know that this is something that I campaigned on, and this is something that, well, I'm not seeing it happening now, so it seems like this might be an opportunity for PAM to implement something like this to improve the social justice by being able to allocate more land to different persons, and also to improve Bastia and make sure that this is something that we can be proud of. Our country can stand proud and tall in terms of what we have to offer to our tourists.
Absolutely. It's not a good Bastia. It's not a good site. It's actually more sore eyes than anything else these days. There's certainly a lot of abandoned buildings. There's a lot of buildings that can do with a facelift.
Yes.
And I know that one
Even
of the things that some
buildings.
countries do as well is provide incentives, because you have to incentivize people sometimes
Yes.
into action. And it would be good if maybe, a little study can be done to see what can be done to bring some sort of aesthetically pleasing projects in some of these areas.
And as I said, there can maybe community groups can come together, and as I said, there's an incentive, and it's all about pride.
Yes, it is.
The pride of making sure that your country is looking its best, and it's not just for fanfare, but I mean, who doesn't want to see St. Kitts and Nevis looking good?
I am a Sandy Pointer, and I've gone back to Sandy Point and realized that our town has also lost a lot of its appeal, because a lot of the properties, that the roadside properties, really have been dilapidated for many years now, and the story is the same, that it is a case where there's some family dispute of land and will, and so people just allow the plots to go in, the property to go into ruin. And really, if government has some, government must leverage its legal power.
Yes.
To make out of these things, so that it doesn't, because it's getting worse, and as you say, it's not a pretty sight for sure.
It's not.
And with that said, maybe we should just segue into talking about housing, because we have established clearly that land is a challenge. I was driving recently with my son, and I was looking at the hill, just, I guess, somewhere in St. Peter's. I think I was coming up the road by Mrs. Slack in New Ponce, and there's a hill somewhere. It could be a hill somewhere in St. Peter's. And I said to him, could you imagine 100 years from now, that hill would be filled with houses? Because we're going to have to build in those hills eventually.
Yes.
The good thing though is that our population is not really growing at an alarming rate. But if people begin to understand the value of owning a house, people are going to want to not wait for an inheritance from their parents and get their own house. But one of the case studies that I was looking at was in Singapore, and Singapore it's an island state. It's not a big country. There's some islands in the Caribbean that could be bigger than Singapore, and they have a model public housing program where the government leads an initiative where over 80% of the residents in Singapore live in public housing. Now, That may sound high,
Yes, it
but
does.
the thing is, they own these houses. So all the government does is to create these homes and allow the citizens to own them. In fact, the one of the ways that those homes are financed is through the Provident Fund. So people use their Provident Fund, the accumulation on the Provident Fund, to actually use it as a down payment on these homes. It's a model that is very interesting. Is worth looking into, and I would recommend that our party begin to look seriously at those sort of models across the world to see how it is we could alleviate housing. Because politically, let's talk about that agreement that in May 2023 was signed between East Coast and the government to construct 2,400 affordable smart homes over a period of 4 years. The project was estimated to cost $600 million. Now, if the agreement was signed shy of 2 years ago, inflation, I am sure, has overtaken the cost of building materials.
Yes.
So this $600 million, you may have to add a couple more $1 million on it. What really is happening with this project? You're in the streets. You are campaigning. I see you doing your walkthroughs. What really is happening with this project? Is it a failure before it is even started?
It's sad that this project is clouded in secrecy. Somehow something has gone wrong, but no one wants to speak about it. Meanwhile, we have persons in temporary housing awaiting these promised 2,400 homes and now facing it's not really a threat, but having to pay rent which they did not anticipate because government placed them in temporary housing. I see a number of sites being done, and a few signs popped up here and there, but as you rightly said, Laverne, we're 2 years shy. So that means by May of this year, we should have had about 1,200.
Yeah.
As far as I'm
Oh, we got
aware,
to catch up.
as far as I'm aware, I'm not sure if you can correct me. I'm not even sure if 200 are completed.
Well, you're being
No, because I know
You're
some
being
are
very
being
generous politically,
I think
you know.
about 3 or 4 was allocated.
yeah.
But I know from time to time, the different photo ops happen. So people think that everything is going well, everything is on target, but they are not on target. How many persons can say to you or say to anyone on the street, I've received a house from
the
East?
program.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard they even told persons to go into Skelec and start setting up their electricity accounts. But for electricity for where? Where are you going to use the electricity?
Oh.
Because it's been almost 2 years, and by now I think we should have had a progress report to say this is what is happening. We have we didn't recognize that the project would have been so long, and so, as you rightly said, inflation has kicked in, and we're trying to secure additional funding. The contractors did not give us what we expected, and so just be patient. We're going to come, but you will not get 600 this year. You will get maybe 150. Something has to be told to the people, but meanwhile there's anxiety amongst our people, because who doesn't want to have a new home and a smart one at that? But
we're not even going to talk about smart because I also but I look for the definition of smart home, and this is nothing but this is not near smart. So
okay, so let's leave the terminology.
Yes.
Who doesn't want to have a home, have a house?
That's right.
To ensure that you're not paying rent for the rest of your life. But the minister, Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, no one has come out and said this is what is happening. Instead of that, when a piece of concrete is being cast somewhere, they take 2 pictures and then for 4 months, nothing happens again. So your hope gets up, you know, you're anxious now, because I am one of those persons who went to Skellig to get my electricity, but where is the home? And, you know, again, that too has been used as a ploy. And as a political tool that sometimes is being used. So it's not just the land, it's the housing. And so maybe there's a delay that, okay, we think elections are going to be in 2027. So in 2026, we're going to, you know, distribute all these housing. The people are smarter than that. Yeah. And, you know, with inflation, a house that you may have been paying maybe 600, 700 for, because NHC is supposed to be for the low income and middle income earners, maybe you may end up having to pay maybe $1,600. And so this is something that now puts a financial burden on our people. I don't know what is wrong, but clearly from the looks of it, we are not going to get 1,000 homes.
Call it what it is. It is a massive failure.
It is.
This is a massive failure.
It is.
And sometimes I wonder if it were another government in power, if the current government in power would have been sitting this silent.
No,
it's a massive failure.
It is.
I mean, you had a public declaration that you're going to build 600 homes in the next every year.
A housing revolution.
And by the end of 4 years, we have 2,400 homes. That's 2,400 families in new homes. And now you have people twiddling their thumbs and like you say, in temporary homes, perhaps they're going to ask them soon to pay the rent.
Well,
to take care of their own rent.
I think that is the situation now. You know, in fact, I heard that some of these persons are going to do a petition because they were in what we call the corner homes in East Boston.
That's in your constituency.
Yes, and so I think there was peppercorn rent, maybe like $20 or something, and now the rent that they have to pay to the landlords, because the agreement was never in NHC's name. It was always in the tenants. Oh. And so the responsibility is no longer that of NHC. And so they are faced with this rent that they have to pay. And I'm hearing that they're going to do a petition.
Oh. Well, they need to do what they have to do, because let me tell you, I've lived long enough to see and hear of politicians who have lost the seat for matters that were less pointed and severe than this. I mean, you're talking about shelter. Shelter is one of the basic fundamental needs and rights of a human being. And here it is that you have promised people that you're gonna have homes for them. Yes, you know what I mean, homes like black pudding selling on the street, as one politician had once said. And now there's nothing. Now, I find that is the biggest insult that you could give people. And like you said, political leader, there has been no explanation.
None whatsoever.
And one of the curious things that happened in the interim, I don't know if you recall, the latter part of last year, could be the latter quarter, the Prime Minister makes a national broadcast. And he announces that they've gone to a commercial bank to get money for housing.
I think it was CIBC.
Yeah. Is that, I mean, what has happened to that program too? Have we heard anything since that?
Nothing.
Has there been groundbreaking since that? So why, I mean, promise after promise after promise and nothing to show? And our people are quiet?
I think this government,
quiet when the bell rings.
I think this government is about hopes, just building and lifting the hope, and then you're falling flat.
People. It's an insult to the constituents. It's an insult.
And somehow they feel that within 2 months they're going to try and fix everything close to an election and expect that persons are going to say, okay, I got my house, I'm going to vote.
Well, God forbid, because I mean, if you build a house and you don't give the concrete and the same time to set, it may be falling down.
We don't want to have any instances of personal injury, but I think this government has taken the people for a fool, and they think that, you know, we are not wise enough.
Well,
I think the electorate has changed, and 2022 has shown us that you
Well,
know,
look at the results from Angola last night.
a one-term
All the
government.
performing government got one term.
One term.
When you're on, but exactly, and people have to learn to let them feel it where it matters most,
Yes.
at the polls. And maybe that is, they say usually when the electorate gets quiet,
That's
is when change is going to come.
Yes.
And our people have really gotten quiet over the last
That's
several
true.
months.
It's true.
No, before we come off of the housing issue, I remember at some media event, the Prime Minister was asked about the same, what has been causing the delay. And he said, which really which really wasn't even, I don't know, it wasn't even acceptable. He was saying that the demand, but people wanted homes that were bigger than what were being offered. Well, excuse me. So you are proposing to build homes without understanding what the needs are you're trying to meet?
That
sounds odd to me.
Sometimes they just keep putting their foot in their mouth. But you would have thought that when you had this assessment, if there was one, you understood what people need. You did a proper analysis of what is needed.
Maybe how many people in each household, how many bedrooms they want. Somebody was saying that that in the kitchen, or in the kitchen, they say in the kitchen, when you turn on, you'll be putting it up on all the appliances because the kitchens were so small. So you'll be putting it into the fridge. So imagine taking a pot to the sink, you'll probably burn yourself. Somebody was making a funny joke of it.
But
I
pray for these families and their children, because we don't want to have any instances of those kind of accidents as a result of poor planning by this government.
Well, he said that they were going back to the drawing board. I mean, the lame excuses that they had gone back to the drawing board because after the fact, there was some discovery, like Eureka, we discovered now that the homes are not adequately, don't have adequate space. So we're going to go back to the drawing board. And so you're going to tell me it takes 2 years to draw a plan? I'm going to have to ask my son if he can knock up something in 2 hours.
One constituent said, Miss Gray, come and visit those places there in East Street, because problems are going to happen. So I really am going to, when it's a little cool down in the afternoon, I'm going to.
And please take the photo.
I'm going to see what's happening in East Street.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And politically, they talk about smart homes. I am not going to call any home smart, except the home can do something, because the definition of a smart home is one that has internet connected devices and remote monitoring. You could stay from here and say, turn on the light in my bedroom, do this, what's in the fridge, what am I going to, do I have meat for tomorrow? I mean, that is a smart home. If you can interact
with the technology like that.
Is that a smart home? And then so put in, saying that you have maybe a system, it's normal. I mean, what makes the home smart? And so even the scripture, even the name that you're giving to the home was so misleading.
Yes, it's misleading.
So all around, it's a whole heap of misleading, a promise that can't be delivered. And really, I mean, this government is weighed in the housing balance and found wanting.
You know what's going to happen? In about 2 weeks, we're going to see some pictures again, because they're listening. And they're going to say, okay, they're talking about housing. They're going to see some pictures again with somebody casting some cement, and to say, okay, we are on the move. That's not what people want.
They could listen, but we're counting, because we can reach 2,400 homes by 2027. I mean, that would be that would be major. And
I wouldn't want one of those houses at all.
People need work. I mean, we have contractors languishing. Somebody told me that a contractor said he's working in a supermarket. So people are languishing on
they have their families to feed.
Breadline. So it would be good if you could mobilize all the contractors across St. Kitts to give them contracts to build these. But that is a long stretch now.
Yes, a very long stretch.
A long stretch.
And we want our people to be safe.
Exactly, because I don't know. I really would like to see this government being able to turn around. And you said you gave them 200 homes. Okay, you're very generous. Very generous. So even so, it still means that there are 2,200 homes left to be built.
Yes.
I would like to see that happen by 2027. I really would love to see that happen. So now we've spoken about land. We've spoken about houses. Now, You can't build a house and you don't have water. And so we're going to segue now to the perpetual challenge we've been having now with the issues of water, political leader. You yourself have said sometimes that you have to rush home before the water goes. What's really happening? Well, let me just to be fair, let me just say that that I read that, and I got this from water.gov.kn, this sentence, this statement, that St. Kitts and Nevis faces a significant water scarcity issue, with per capita renewable water resources falling below 1,000 cubic meters annually, classifying us as a water scarce nation by UN standards. Now, I want to ask a question. How did we get here? Is it a case where willful waste is causing woeful want? I remember as a child, the pipe, I mean, you would be going to school and you turn on the pipe, and if you can't get the pipe turned off, you leave it so that pipe still running for months sometimes. Well, no, not really, because our friend Cindy's father was working in the water department, and you had to run from sailor if you see him coming, you couldn't get the pipe turned off, because he was one person who was very vigilant with water wastage, and more power to him. And Cindy, if Cindy's listening, and if any Sandy pointers are listening, they would know exactly what I'm talking about. Because if you couldn't get a pipe turned off and you saw sailor coming on that bicycle, you better run because it wasn't going to be possible. He was vigilant when it comes to water wastage. So we're in 2025 now, and apparently the resources have run dry.
Yes. You know, when I was growing up, some of my first few trips was to St. Martin. And I can remember, I mean, I was a child, so I didn't really take it that seriously. I can remember the lady that we were staying with, and I could hear her telling my mother, make sure that Shani don't run the water too long and that kind of thing. And you didn't understand, and don't run the pipe when you're brushing your teeth. And it seems like we're here. But I don't think that it happened overnight. It had to be years of neglect in terms of our infrastructure, mismanagement, and ensuring, even now with the rationing of the water, ensuring that there is good, proper public awareness in terms of when it will happen, for how long. Because you hear the cries almost every day. Oh, water gone again. This is a weekend, I can't wash my child clothes, I have to cook. And sometimes they try, I can see the ministry, their attempts, but sometimes it is without notice, and sometimes it is for days on end. I mean, in the Shadwell area, I know for one time we were out of water for 14 days.
What?
14 days at that. I thought it was
crazy.
I thought this was COVID lockdown.
That's crazy.
But I can remember that at that point my tank was not connected, and so it had to be storage, because there was nothing that I had to pump the water into the house. And I can remember we were on our last day of storage before having to go and at that point we didn't have anybody coming to give us water. And so you hear the cries of persons. How does this help a mother with a baby? How does this help businesses in terms of, especially those who cook? And you don't even have to cook. You have a staff, they want to be able to use the bathroom facilities with some ease of access without having to worry about, what is going to happen after. And that would also affect the businesses who have to use the water for their services. That will affect their income. It would also maybe cause them to close, and maybe their employees lose a day pay. The schools, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if it was this term, January or September, where the Bastier High School and I think it was Beach Allen.
Sent a notice out.
Yeah, there was no water. You have a school with hundreds of children, and that is a problem. Sometimes you go, I'm not sure how often the water goes by your side, Laverne. But I can remember going to Beauty Inside Out, which is on that stretch, and they had no water at one point in time. They need the water to do their pedicures and their manicures.
So it affects business and profitability.
This is what shocked me last week. A client came to me for another issue, but she works in the hemodialysis unit, and the machine that they use to, I guess, purify the blood and all that was running low on water.
Oh.
And so they had to tell some of these patients that they're going to have to stop the process for this day, because it will mean that they will not be able to carry out the process and purify the blood. And you know what that can mean for somebody who's on dialysis?
That's
So
crazy.
if our present health institution, the
It's
main,
affected in
is
that
being
way.
affected,
Yeah.
our citizens, man, if you're not looking after the health of your nation, you sometimes wonder, like, what is happening? Are they really concerned? Is it that they feel that they have done enough to say that we have gotten water in Keon? Even that water, Laverne, I mean, I've heard some of the concerns.
At our listening tour,
The color of the water,
Yeah,
whether
the
it's healthy
smell,
to drink,
the taste.
even to bathe with. That means people have to buy bottled water to bathe with, to cook with.
that's another
That,
expense.
I mean, you're
crazy.
paying $20 in some instances for water, but then you have to buy $5 the 5 liter gallon of water to do things other than drinking.
Yeah.
That is something that we really have to look at. And you know, someone was speaking to me. I was a bit young that in this instance, but I read the 1995 manifesto, and I saw that Sir Ken and his team, they had actually secured funding. I think it was about $17 million for the Kuwaiti water project.
Drinking water project, yeah.
And in 2000, the Labour Party boasted about, you know, doing different wells in different areas of St. Kitts. But this was as a result of the hard work and the commitment that our party, because we think water is important.
It is. Water impacts the quality of life and living. In fact, I had some notes here of some of the things that in since in the 80s up to the 90s, before PAM, the Limited office, did with respect to water. And I'm glad you mentioned the Kuwaiti project was a major project that made sure that a lot of areas in St. Kitts had potable water. But even so, they also had expansion of groundwater wells, construction of storage reservoir. PAM in the 80s and 90s developed pumping stations, enhancement of the water treatment facilities, rehabilitation of the water distribution network. So yes, there was a lot of work that was done to ensure that the water supply in St. Kitts was consistent, it was safe, understanding that water that is potable and water that is of good quality also means water that could help to improve the quality of life.
Yes.
Because you just said, highlighted some of the challenges with scarcity of water. And I want us to go over them one by one. Because, and I know you kind of said them on the fly, but the impact of the lack of good water is not something I think that we are taking seriously. So looking at the impact on residents, we know about people's health and their hygiene.
Yes.
We know that if people don't wash their hands properly after they use the bathroom, that all sorts of diarrhea and or, you know, those kind of skin infections and all those things can happen. When water disrupts your daily life, could you imagine you could barely maybe send your children to school, but when they come back home, how are you going to cook a meal for them? How are you going to wash their clothes? How are they going to use the bathroom?
Yes.
I mean, when you push families to buy water to do these things, you are in fact causing them to spend money that already they don't have. And so, you know, I think we are the electorate has become quiet about these kinds of issues, but it is, I think we are on the severe stress about the consistent quality and availability of water. Even when I think you were making the point when you heard the last time about how water affects agriculture.
Yes.
I think you said you were in conversation with some farmers who said that they were having a major challenge.
And I mean, food security is something that we saw.
Touting.
Yes. And you know, this 25 by 25 agenda. So how are the farmers supposed to operate with inadequate water supply? And you know, sometimes I mean I hear on the program, sometimes I hear persons from the Ministry of Agriculture speaking about sometimes too much water can kill the crops, and sometimes if you don't give them daily some crops, then they start to get certain diseases. They're not healthy enough for our people to eat. So we are killing the core of our society when water is drying up. Now, we understand climate change and all these things, but the government has a responsibility to put certain measures in place to alleviate some of what our people are experiencing. Now, you could understand that, okay, we don't have the amount of rainfall that we once had, but what measures are being in place? Because, I mean, there's a rainy season and there's a dry season. What measures are being put in place for our rainy season to save and ensure that we can, you know, secure some of that water for other uses, whether it is for farmers, whether it is to be able, you carry out all the necessary cleansing so that it's sufficient enough to help with some of the lack that we have. And I don't think as a government they are doing a proper job in terms of not just educating our people, but informing them so that they can put certain things in place. Now, I know that there was what you call it now, the tanks. There was a distribution of the tanks. I was just about to say that, because those who in need, did they get? Did they get? Did some persons get more than
and
one?
And not even been set up
and exactly, because you're not having that constant flow of water into your house, or maybe some persons can't afford
the connection required to set them up.
So, did it solve the problem, or did it fatten someone's pocket?
Maybe the latter. You're right. I think this government's Achilles heel is its lack of communication. And this is not a perfect world. This is not utopia. There would be problems along the way. But sometimes it is important to let people know, look, this is the difficulty that we're experiencing. Until we get it sorted out, we recommend you do X, Y, and Z. But we're not hearing about the houses. We're not hearing about issues with people who were paying for the land. I mean, this government needs to employ somebody who can communicate all of these. I don't find something to tell people. There's just too many things happening without the public fully understanding what is going on.
If I didn't need you, Laverne, I'd tell you apply for the job. Apply for the job.
Well, you know, I mean, when we talk about sustainable means that you have to wear red. And so if you don't wear red, you can't, you'll go hungry. You know, so they won't take me on.
It's unfortunate. It's
Very
unfortunate because
that is bad. If you're talking about a sustainable island state, you really must also think about your human capacity.
Exactly.
And your human resources. And in islands, all we have are our people. We don't have any. Certainly, I don't know that we have any gold and any copper anywhere to mine. But of course, if you can't invest in your people and you can't incorporate your people into your sustainability plan, or if you're only using 50% of the people, then it means that me and you must suffer and languish somewhere. But God is love.
He is. And he's not going to let our people suffer. He's not going to let our people suffer. Sometimes, we go through rough patches, but when you look back and you see what you had, and then when you come out of the rough patch and you see, you compare, it's like chalk to cheese. You wonder, why did I make this error? But
you're going, came good.
You're going to write.
Evil came good.
St. Kitts and Nevis is going to write the wrong.
Of course. And as we wind up the conversation, and we talk about the impact on business, because the impact on the lack of water and the impact it has on business is not to be sneezed at. We have hotels that have pool. They have to do laundry. They have to. Some hotels have restaurants. Could you imagine not having water? I think I heard a guest on Deputy Political Leader Gom's show a few weeks ago, saying that he was staying at a particular hotel in Frigate Bay, and they were told that they will have to use bottled water for the shower. Now, when he said that, me being this proud Kittitian and the vision woman, I was most embarrassed. It really embarrassed me because I've heard about stories about people having to use bottled water in hotels in other islands, but I did not think, never in my wildest imagination would I have imagined that it would happen to us in St. Kitts.
Laverne, I did not hear the gentleman, but I experienced it. Because you know that we had that training the other day somewhere. And I was afforded a room. And when I checked in, that's one of the things that they told me.
Oh.
The water may go, so you may have to use bottled water.
That's I don't know. It's.
And so now that you're saying it, I said maybe that's the hotel, but then again it's on the same.
It was the hotel. That was the same hotel.
Wow.
No, how does a guest feel when you tell them that? I mean, the thing is, we got to understand that water is one of those things that spur development. You need water for construction, you need water in the hotel, you need water for manufacturing. Take the breweries. Now the breweries is heavily dependent on water to cool their systems, for the actual product and all of that.
Yes.
And so if we can't get water, then you just made the point. If one day the brewers show up and there's no water, they have to go home.
That is true.
They have to go home. And so we really have to find a way to solve post haste this water issue.
And the majority of our people can't afford to lose a day pay.
Not in this guava crop.
They can't afford.
Not in this strangulation economy.
Some employers might say, okay, I will pay you still, but maybe some persons can't really afford it.
Exactly. So we really have to look at long-term solutions, and perhaps desalination is the way to go. And I'm aware, that the government has started some work. I mean, I don't know if they're stopped because we have not seen any progress report in recent times. But we are aware that a desalination plant, construction for a plant started. But one of the other things that we want to highlight where that is concerned politically, we were talking earlier about the fact that these plants utilize a lot of energy. And so we're hoping that not only is the desalination plant constructed, but it would be powered by some form of renewable energy, so that it doesn't put more strain on another utility that is under stress. That would need a whole other show to talk about.
Because you fix the issue with the water, but then the burden comes on our people with the energy.
Exactly. So I mean, again, we cannot grow an island. We cannot grow our economy if we are having challenges with those resources, with water and electricity. It is impossible. I mean, who is going to come here and say put down a factory on the industrial side if your power supply is not reliable and if your water is non-existent?
They might as well pack up shop, but
exactly.
As you said, investment is something that persons would really want to see in the country, and having had persons in our team before, our administration, understand the need and the importance of water and electricity, that is something that we can seek some of the guidance from our forefathers and ensure that investment is something that would not be hindered as a result of unreliable water and electricity. And so I am, hopeful that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis would see this administration for what it is, and they will see an alternative going forward in the People's Action Movement.
There's nothing left for me to say but amen. Because, sometimes when you sit down and you examine what is happening around you, you say, it can't get worse than this. It really can't get worse than this. I don't know, even if you put a bunch of novices in government headquarters tomorrow, it can't get worse than this. And so, in the meantime, we'll continue to pray and be hopeful that things would change. But surely the government owes a lot of explanation.
A lot.
To the electorate about its underperformance, where land and housing is concerned, where water is concerned, where electricity is concerned. And if these things cannot be answered, then the electorate has the answer in 2027.
Yes.
And I don't think they'd like the answer.
Well, we would.
Well, we certainly would. We certainly would. And if you ask me, I think it's even too late for redemption. Well, spiritually speaking, redemption is never too late. But politically speaking,
yes.
This redemption is certainly too late. And on that note, political leader, and except you want to say something really very quickly.
I mean, we have addressed some important pillars of our society, and the People's Action Movement will continue to champion the cause of our people. I mean, just today, my deputies and I met, and we discussed these same issues. And so, going forward, you will hear more from the People's Action Movement on the issues that touch and concern our people. And very soon, we know that you will see us in a different light, in a different capacity, but we are all about people, and you will never be left behind.
Thank you so much. And we are planning a series of perspectives that would really call into question some of the shortcomings of this government. We want to look in depth